Live on WFLA Now. With a specialized degree in climate, Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Berardelli is pioneering the way we look at climate and extreme weather. Welcome to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by ArmorView Window and Door.
You talk about climate change often on air, but what changes are you, Jeff Berardelli, making to minimize your carbon use? And that is from Joe, one of our WFLA viewers. And what we've been doing for the Berardelli bonus, which is a segment that I do on air every day for about a minute and a half or so, is we've been taking questions from viewers. And this was, I thought, an important question to answer is, am I just, educating people and preaching about climate change, but I'm not actually doing anything in my own personal life to curb or help curb climate change, at least kind of setting an example, walking the walk, putting my money where my mouth is? Well, I am doing all of that, and we're going to talk all about what I'm doing and also what I'm doing and how it helps. It doesn't help just me, but if everyone did it, it certainly would help. All right, to help me talk about this, I'm bringing on our very own Val Simpson, who is not only climate curious, but she is one of our weather folks here in our WFLA weather team, Max Defender 8 weather team. Thank you, Val, for being here.
That's right. Thank you, Jeff. I think that this is going to be a very exciting episode. We talk about it all the time here at the Weather Center. We've learned a lot, especially about your eating habits, which I can't wait to talk about that. And obviously, like always, I do have my trusty buzzer here. Let me see. Where's the camera?
Wait, hold on. Let's do that again, but this time
there
full
we go.
screen.
All full screen. Here we go. I do have it. I don't think I'm going to be needing it that much this episode because I really want to hear you out and listen about your experience. But yeah, let's get right to it. First, wait, before we get started, shout out to Joe, the viewer who sent in this question that totally you don't get a lot of these, do you?
No, I do. I think a lot of folks who are skeptical about climate change and a lot of folks who are skeptical about climate change, they'll say, all right, you're telling us how bad it is and, you're telling us that the climate is changing, but are you actually doing anything yourself? And the truth is that I've been on a mission for many years and I have been.
Yeah. And how did the mission get started?
Well, climate change for me didn't start all of a sudden. It's something that I learned about in college. I went to Cornell University, got my bachelor's degree in atmospheric sciences there. And at the time, back in the 90s, they were already teaching about climate change. It was already happening.
Yeah.
And I took an interest in it. And I dabbled in it for probably 15 years until I really jumped in full force around 2015 or so, give or take.
Okay.
But I lived in Miami. I was a meteorologist in Miami for years, and I was watching it happen in front of my face. Val, you're familiar with Miami.
Yeah, I am.
In South Beach, the sea level was rising to the point it was causing traffic on South Beach all the time. I lived there.
Yeah.
And sometimes there was a foot and a half of water on the roads.
Right.
That's due to both subsidence of the barrier island there and also sea level that's rising.
Yeah.
And so Miami Beach invested like $500 million to try to solve the problem by raising the roads and installing pumps. So I watched it right in front of my face, literally, on the front lines of climate change. And that kind of changed my outlook on things and made me realize that someone had to jump in, as many people as possible, to educate the public and society about how quick the changes are happening.
And I don't know if you want to talk about this right now or if you were waiting to mention it last, but you did do something that requires a lot of courage. Not everybody can do what you did. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Look, I was working as a chief meteorologist in South Florida.
Yeah.
And
this is your primary source of income.
It was. It was. In fact, I think my wife was working to some degree, but not really at the time.
Right.
But she had a job of some sort. I can't even remember at the time. She was teaching, but I think she was like filling in. I don't think she was a full-time teacher.
Right.
And so I decided in 2000 I really decided this earlier, but I did it in 2018.
So it was something you were thinking about, but you didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, I thought about it for a few years because it was going to require me leaving my job.
Wow.
And not having a salary. So what I did was I left my job in 2018, but I was planning it for years. Without a salary, my wife had no salary. We moved to Manhattan, of all places, which is extraordinarily expensive.
Yeah.
And I had applied to Columbia University to get my master's degree, and I got it. But the plan wasn't just to go to school and get my master's degree in climate. I thought, and that's what I mean. So am I walking the walk? Well, yeah. I could have just started talking about climate change from there. I didn't. I went back and said, let me make sure even though I already have an atmospheric sciences degree, let me make sure I know the latest that I need to know about climate change, and that I'm educating myself and becoming an expert on climate change. That's why I went back and got my master's degree. But it wasn't just that, Val.
Yeah.
It was, I wanted to place myself in New York City so that I could help to kind of get the networks there in New York City to talk
You were
about
at the
climate
cream
change
of the
more.
crop of the media.
What'd you say?
You were at the cream
I
of the
had to
crop
be.
of the media.
I thought about going to other schools, but first of all, Columbia had the best program, so that was a no-brainer. But in addition, I knew that the place I really needed to be for this was New York City, because if I was going to educate the population, I needed to be near where the networks were, so I could hopefully get it into the networks and convince them that this was a story that really needed to be told, because it was happening so quickly.
How did New York City receive that?
I mean, luckily, I was very, I would say, very patient, but very persistent. And I had a plan going in. I was going to both get my degree at Columbia University and speak to CBS News, because I had been working on and off for CBS for a long time. Not CBS News, but the CBS local stations. And I had contacts at CBS News, which I had for years on and off. So anyway, when I got there, it was the end of hurricane season. They didn't have a meteorologist, but there were things that were happening that required a meteorologist, and I got in the door as essentially a meteorologist, on camera meteorologist for CBS News, and gradually started to do climate change stuff for their 24-hour streaming service, and then eventually brought that to the broadcast side on the CBS This Morning, and I did that for a few years. So the plan for about leading up to it was a 2, 3, 4 year plan of picking up, moving to New York, cultivating connections there. And then eventually when I got there, the pieces fell into place within a few months of getting there, which was amazing. And I was able to do what I needed to do. So that, I would say, is the biggest contribution that I've made to climate change. But I do personal things in my life too.
Ooh, let's talk about your personal things. Let's talk about that, because I feel like that might be like the hardest thing, right, for folks. Or do you think it would be easier? Can they take your advice and maybe try to adapt some of these changes?
Well, I think some of them are easy, right? We drive. First of all, we only have one car, and it's a hybrid plug-in car. It's not an EV. And I always say this to people. A lot of people are like, well, but EVs are not, they're too expensive, or EVs can't be plugged in everywhere. The infrastructure is not there. And I would agree. It's not. That's why I have a hybrid car, because when I left Manhattan to move down here to WFLA, I didn't have a car. So I needed to buy a car, but I couldn't buy a pure EV because I had to figure out how to get my wife and my 2-month-old baby all the way down Interstate 95 and eventually 75 to Tampa. So I ended up buying a plug-in hybrid car, and it served me well because I've had opportunities to plug it in, but sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to plug it in. So that, I would say, is the easiest. And I have a graphic, by the way, Val.
Oh,
I'm going to put you up on full screen so that I can. And you can just talk. You can just talk about whatever you filibuster.
Well, another thing, I will, because I was reading that article that you posted that got published just 5 minutes ago about what we're going to be talking about here today, and it also mentioned the distance of where you live in terms of where you go to work. It's a short distance too, and that helps with.
It does. I mean, that's more of a coincidence than anything, because I always
not everybody can.
Well, I like to live near work. I've always not liked commutes.
You must be like the only person I know
No, everyone. I mean, everyone.
No, it's true.
I get
it's
that,
true.
but you know what? It comes from living in when I was born and raised in Staten Island, and my mother used to travel to Manhattan every day. It was like an hour and a half by bus, by train, by whatever to get there. So 3 hours of your day commuting. So for me, it's mainly just I want to be close to work so I can spend more time with my family. But it does help with your carbon footprint because you're not driving as much back and forth. So you're emitting less carbon. So yes. But I wanted to bring this up because a lot of folks have questions about, are EVs really cleaner than gas-powered vehicles? And the latest stats on it, and of course this changes because EVs get more efficient and better, but for right now, on average in the U.S., so as a whole, everybody's situation is different, but right now, gas-powered cars are significantly less clean than electric cars. Electric cars emit around 24 tons of carbon pollution in their lifetime. So this is the lifetime. If you have the car 10 years, maybe a lifetime is 10 years. And gas-powered cars will emit 58 tons over their lifetime. So electric vehicles are about 60% less lower lifetime emissions than than gas cars.
Very
and of
cool.
course,
That's
that gap is gonna get wider, right? Electric vehicles will become more efficient over time.
Right.
It'll take less to create the electric vehicles, and therefore they'll probably be, that number will rise in terms of lowering.
And in the
the
past, we
lifetime
did have an episode that we talked about this because there was it was something that was very popular. We see it,
and people always make this point, Val, that when you produce an electric car, it actually is more carbon intensive. That is true. In the first year of the lifetime of an EV, because the battery takes so much energy to make, it actually is dirtier. But if you have the car more than a year or a year and a half, then all of a sudden it starts to become cleaner. That's right.
That's
Balances out
awesome.
because you're using electric and not gas.
That's really cool. And also we talked about the grid too, right? Of where you live. That's
right.
also important. You need to know that. So it's good to know where you live and
That's why that's an average.
That's an average.
That's an
Very
average
good.
because
Okay,
it would be
makes
different
sense.
in Kentucky and
that
West
in
Virginia where
Florida.
it's mostly coal powered. Yeah.
Makes sense. Very good. Well, tell us, what else do you do? So we got the car situated, and what else?
Right. So
Tell us about your other experiences, because I know you do a couple of things. There's a few things that you actually have shared with us. I can't wait to get to the food part. So you let me know when
this
you're
is
going
the
to
food
share.
part.
Ah,
we can
look
talk
at
about
that. What a good
other stuff too.
segue. Great.
So you know what I'll do? I'll put this in a box here, and this is, and I always, and I just want to say this because I didn't say it at the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that people do any of this stuff. You can, if you want to help, you can do it, but I would never push this on anyone else. This has to be a personal decision. Not everyone can drive an EV. They just can't. Or a plug-in hybrid vehicle. Not everyone can leave their job and go back to school to get a degree in climate change.
Absolutely. That's very
Not
good.
everyone can do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. Everybody has their own personal experience, and you might be able to help in ways that I can't help. But this is one thing that I do. So let me put this up on the screen.
Yeah.
My wife and I stopped eating meat around 8 years ago, okay? This wasn't just for climate change. Climate change was a part of it, but the decision, I would say, was more because of animal welfare.
Right.
My wife, saw something that really bothered her, started watching documentaries on industrial meat practices, and just found it to be really repulsive and thought it was really unethical and mean. And so she decided that she didn't want to eat meat anymore. Yeah. And then, my wife wears the pants in the family. And so within a couple of days, I said, okay, honey, I'm not going to eat meat either, which was kind of the road that we were going down at the time. This was probably like
you're a
8
smart
years
man
ago.
because happy wife, happy life.
Believe
so
me, I
very
know that.
good for
I know
you.
that very, very well.
But yeah, I can understand that because shout out to Christy, by the way. But yeah, those documentaries that you mentioned, after you see or after you watch that, you cannot unsee that.
That's right.
And yeah.
So we took, look, it's a thing where you commit to doing it. And if you can last more than a few months, you can probably last your lifetime. You just got to get through the first few months, which is tough. So by the way, in an average person's diet, meat is 57% of their carbon footprint, of their diet-related, food-related carbon
almost
footprint.
60% of what they eat is.
That's right. 57% of the typical American diet is how much meat's carbon footprint is in your diet, okay? So obviously, and I should mention, if you reduce your meat consumption completely, you don't eliminate 57% of the emissions because you're going to be replacing that meat with other sources of food. Yeah. But you will reduce your carbon footprint significantly. In the case of some people, it would be a 50% reduction in your food-related carbon emissions.
So after you guys stopped eating meat, what did you replace it with?
We eat tofu. I actually still eat fish. We still eat fish. Okay. We still eat salmon and other kinds of fish as well.
Great protein.
So we're pescatarians, not
pescatarian.
Yeah.
That's good. But I do want to mention, hold on, let's talk about this because there was one day you brought lunch to work. It smelled delicious, and I was sitting right next to you, and I'm like, what are you eating? Because it smells so good. I'm thinking, I'm like, it might be tofu. So I didn't want to ask. But
it was fake chicken, but I got it.
But it was Chinese food. Like when I looked, your plate looked.
Well, I don't know if it was technically Chinese.
It wasn't technically. Well, I know, but it looked like it. It smelled like it was an Asian fusion. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, it was great. There's a food truck in downtown Tampa, which has these Asian fusion dishes. I forget the name of it. Yeah. And man, is it good. First of all, it's like 2 meals in one.
Yeah.
You get a lot.
It was a good portion.
And it's chicken, but it's not chicken.
So it was like
fake chicken.
impossible
Yeah, I don't know.
chicken?
I
would
don't
you
know. I
say?
didn't ask them if it was impossible, or if it was Beyond Meat, or what it was, but it
Yeah.
was. It's
Well,
good, right? You tasted it.
Yeah, because you let Rebecca and I both try it, and we were both like, "Wow, this is surprisingly really good. It tastes like the real thing." You know,
Yeah.
I think that sometimes it kind of turns people off because they don't know how it's going to taste, and they don't want to take a chances. So,
Yep.
but it was really good. So.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, it was tough at first because meat alternatives they existed 8 years ago, but not like they do now. I mean,
Right.
Impossible Meat and Beyond Meat have come such a long way. In fact, if you've ever
I
had their
can imagine.
hamburgers, I think you would have a hard time telling the difference between a regular hamburger and an
Yeah.
Impossible hamburger. And there are
Yeah.
times where I actually have asked the servers, hey, when you go out to eat,
Yeah.
hey, are you
sure?
sure this isn't meat? Because I don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah.
So, so there are alternatives that are better for the environment,
Yeah.
than regular meat. But again,
Do you find them at the local grocery store? Is it
yeah, they
easy
sell
to
it
find?
Sure, they
or-
sell it at Whole Foods, they sell it at Publix, they sell it at Sprouts. Nowadays, yeah, you can
Find it.
you can find that stuff anywhere, and there's a
Good
lot
to know.
more coming to market.
Right.
Cheese is actually getting to the point where
Oh, love
some of the
cheese.
cheese is very good. Me too. I've had macaroni and cheese at a restaurant. It's a place called Good Intentions in downtown St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Which is I go like once a month, but it is
Yeah,
so
so
good. I
good.
mean, some of their food is better than the real thing. Their macaroni and cheese
Yeah.
better than regular macaroni and cheese.
Wow.
I'm telling you.
So good.
It's the truth. And but again,
Yeah.
I just want to I'll say it again.
Yeah.
Not asking anyone else to do it.
Right.
But I'm just giving you options as to what you can do, and I'm just telling you what I do.
Yeah. Speaking of food, you had once shared with me that Americans, we tend to waste a lot of food.
That's right.
I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was astronomical.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
Sure, it's up to 40%.
Wow.
It's somewhere between
It's almost
30 and
50%.
40%. It's crazy. It's close to 40% of food in America is wasted. And my
Unbelievable.
wife and I would say, we've gotten a lot more conscious of this.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, we become probably more efficient and more kind of minimalist. I wouldn't say we're minimalist, but we're closer to that.
Yeah.
I take that responsibility really seriously. There are people in this world, and a lot of them, who do not have any food. So for me, making sure that I waste as little food as possible is not only a climate decision and not only an environmental decision, but I think an ethical decision.
Yeah.
Because I shouldn't be wasting anything. There are so many people who don't have anything at all. So for
Absolutely.
me, and that's the reason why I got into climate in the first place. I have the background in atmospheric sciences, and I have the platform to kind of educate people. So I thought it was my responsibility. But for me, this is very ethical and moral. We're destroying this world, through various purposes. One of them being climate change. That's the one I can help the most with, right? I can't stop wars, unfortunately. I would if I could. But what I can do with my background in science and atmospheric sciences and platform is educate people. But where I come from, why it bothers me is it bothers me from a moral and ethical perspective, right?
Yeah.
If this is God's creation that we're living on,
Yeah.
then we are literally putting our feet up on God's couch.
Right.
I mean, we're destroying someone else's world, like
Without taking off our shoes.
And not only, and even if you don't believe in God, and you believe that God created the earth, then we're destroying the world for our children and our grandchildren. So for me, I come from a moral, and ethical perspective.
Yeah. No, I love that. And just taking it a step back, talking about wasting food. My grandmother is Italian, and she taught me a really good trick that when you have leftovers, instead of throwing them out, you can just crack an egg and you kind of fry it. It's called frittata. So she will frittata everything that was left over. It doesn't matter.
It's a good
so instead
idea.
of, right? And then there you go. You have lunch or breakfast for the next day. So I thought that's a good tip too.
That is a good
that we
idea. And
could
I'm
use.
Italian, of course, as well. So yeah.
So did you know about that little trick?
I
that the
didn't
next
know
day
about
food,
the frittata. I definitely have frittated.
Well, frittata, fancy
Is
frittata.
frittata-ing a verb?
Maybe. Well, you just made it up. So I guess, no, you know what? I'm sorry, but I got to,
Okay, all right.
I'm going to beat
I
you on
deserve
that.
that. I deserve that.
Yeah. But no, that's, these are all good points. And what would you say, though, that is the most important thing? What could people do?
Care.
Wow.
Care. Just care. I know. I said this yesterday. Is there a microphone?
Where?
Well, I was going to drop it. But anyway, no. But you want to buzz me? Come on. I'm egging it on over here. There we But in all seriousness, I could tell you a million things you could do, but the one thing would be just care. A lot of people don't. There are a number of people who either don't believe the climate is changing or believe the climate is changing, but they think it's natural and it's not caused by humans. But I can tell you that that virtually every scientist on Earth, with the exception of a few, know that climate change is being caused by the emissions from the energy we produce. Burning fossil fuels, emitting heat-trapping carbon dioxide and methane, and also land use changes. The more we cut down trees and burn trees, the less the Earth is able to kind of mitigate or essentially suck that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So all you have to do is care. This is not an ideological battle. I'm a scientist. I am constantly reading all the latest studies, and it's concerning what's happening because the climate is changing very quickly. People make this ideological. They make this political. They think that this is their team and that's their team. Yeah. But for me, it's not about any of those things. I'm looking at the data and the science, and it is remarkable how quick things are changing. And Val, you know what? I'm going to show you. I'm gonna bring it up on. I'm gonna bring it up on screen right now.
Let me see it.
This wasn't planned.
Okay.
But
you're gonna pull it up. But while you're saying that, I do want to. There was. I just remembered something that you did say, and it was for those people that think that this is, it naturally, the world is going through this natural process. Yeah. Even if it is the natural process, what we are doing is accelerating it. Accelerating it. Yeah, making it faster.
But actually, it's not a natural process, and I say that because we're not at this point. We should be trying to head back into a gradual ice age over the next literally 100,000 years. So we're not accelerating anything. The Earth would not be warming right now. There's no extra energy coming in from the sun on average than has been coming in over the past 100 years. So what you see there is a map of the Atlantic Ocean. Right. And wherever you see the red is where it's above normal. And the main development region, the hurricane region, by far the warmest it's ever been. But I want to show you, so that box.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
That box, what I'm going to do is sample the temperatures from that box.
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to show you how it's changed. Right? Mm-hmm. So, and you know what? I'm going to bring this up full. I'm going to bring it because we're cutting off part of it. Okay. So this is the temperatures in February for that box that I showed you of the Atlantic Ocean since the middle of the 1800s. Notice what has happened over the past 1 or 2 years there on the very right. Yeah. The temperatures are 2.5. That average of that whole box, the temperature is 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit for February. Right. Because we don't have the data for March yet. For this paper. It is 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. The average of the whole box. Okay. Yeah. Now, the last big increase was 2011. That was 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's gone up another 1.1 degrees Fahrenheit average of that whole box since 2011. Of course, it went down after that. So there are ups and downs. Right. But look at that up.
Yeah, no,
that is not normal or natural. Something really strange is going on. We know some of the factors that are going on. You hear people talking about the Hunga Tonga volcano. We think that's a very, very small part of it, less than 1/10 of a degree. You hear people talking about aerosols and the lack of them. What I mean by lack of pollution across the Atlantic basin.
Oh, yeah, I remember talking about that.
Because we've cleaned the atmosphere up since the Clean Air Act in America. Yeah. And so, yes, that contributes another small portion to it. But there's, the head of NASA, Goddard, who's really the head of the climate change program at NASA, just a couple of days ago put out a paper in Nature. It's really a commentary in Nature saying, okay, what has happened over the past, year or two? We can quantify, we can explain a small part of it, but there's a whole another big part of it we can't explain. Using everything we know, all our data, all our computer models, we can explain that much of it, but we can't explain that much of it.
And when they say they can't explain, what are they referring to?
They're saying that there's something missing. They're saying, and not all scientists agree. There are, I would say at this point, there are a greater number of scientists who are alarmed about what has happened over the last year or two that say that we can't explain all of it. There are still some very well-known, very well-respected climate scientists that think, no, this is in the range that we thought would happen.
Right.
And it could be both, right? It could be that this is in the range of what the computer models forecast, and it is. It is within that range. Okay. I can tell you that for sure.
What do you think?
Well, hold on a second. Let me finish the thought. It is in the range of what the computers expected, but we didn't expect such a huge jump from 2022 to 2023 and 2024, and we can't truly explain it. So both of those things are true. It is in the range of what the computers thought might happen.
Okay.
Towards the top end of it,
Right.
but it is in the range of it.
It is in the range.
Because we run not just one computer model; it's hundreds of, it's dozens of computer models and hundreds of computer model ensembles.
Yeah.
But we also can't mathematically explain exactly why it's gotten so warm this year. El Nino is a part of it.
Right.
Maybe Hunga Tonga is a small part, the volcano that put water vapor into the stratosphere, and also the decrease in pollution across the North Atlantic Ocean. These are all things that contribute, but they don't add up to the jump that we've seen, that we see in this graphic right here.
Right.
We should have seen about half of the jump.
Yeah.
Mathematically,
Right.
that we ended up seeing. Okay, so that's what do I think?
Yeah.
I think they're both true. I think that there's some splaining to do.
Right.
You know, as Desi Arnaz used to say in I Love Lucy. Do I get a?
That's before my time, so I'm gonna. We're
Anyway.
too young here. No, I'm just kidding. What was that? Oh no.
What? What are you talking about?
I saw a cross on the screen, but that was the beat behind me. Yeah. No, so that's interesting. I mean, that right now we're seeing that the science community is kind of like,
They're
on
debating
two
it.
sides of the fence on this because, I mean, I guess, we all want to know. We're like, well, what is causing it? How do we stop it? What can we do?
Yeah. So the answer is care. So getting back to what I said before, there are people who push back against this. They think it's a political football. It's my team versus their team. It's ideological. It's a conspiracy. It's all this stuff. It's none of those things. This is really what's happening. It's humans that are causing climate change. It's happening fast. And if you would just, simply care, then you will start looking into it more, right? And then once you start looking into it more, you'll start realizing how important it is, how significant it is, and maybe you'll start making the changes that you can make personally. I can't tell you what to do. I can't put solar panels on my roof because I live in a condo.
Right.
But you might be able to,
right?
So on and so forth. There are things you might be. I can drive a smaller car, but you may have to drive a pickup truck because you may need it for work.
Right.
That's understandable.
Right.
Right. There are no alternatives to flying at this time because if you need to go a couple thousand miles, it's almost impossible to get there. So I would never shame anyone for flying.
Right.
I fly sometimes.
Yeah.
But that is a big carbon footprint.
Right.
That's maybe in 20 years we'll have an alternative to commercial jets.
Yeah.
That that they use electric or they use some type of other fuel like hydrogen or whatever.
That was one of my biggest questions when we started talking about this. It was always like, what's going on with airplanes though? Because we can try to fix things here, on the roads, but what's going to happen over there? So I think, same as you. I think that as the years go by and, advancements in technology and science, we'll be able to see that.
So the bottom line is doing what you can. When you can, right? Technology 10 years ago to put solar panels on your roof was kind of not really there. It was at its infancy.
Right.
Electric cars, you really couldn't have an electric car 10 years ago. So you
Food
do
alternatives.
Low-hanging fruit.
Right.
You do the low-hanging fruit, and then you wait until a technological advance comes in the next thing, and you adopt that. But I think just caring is where it all starts. That's the truth.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'm so excited because you do walk the walk. So, and we learned so much. And, maybe someone that hears this might take one of your advice and maybe, apply them to their everyday life.
They can always email me. Really, weather@wfla.com.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have questions about how you can help, how you can be a part of the solutions, just email me, weather@wfla.com. And I want to point you in the direction of, we have an article on the website right now. It's probably on the front page, the homepage right now. But if you can't find it there, go to the weather tab, then click on Climate Classroom, and you'll be able to find the article there. And it's basically, this one is just simply about how I personally walk the walk. And there's other things I do. We haven't discussed everything that I do. True. But at least we've discussed some of the things that I do that are important. Yeah. One other thing I'll say, aligning your finances with climate change is also a good idea, and it's something that I have done in my personal life as well. Okay.
Yeah, you do talk about that in your article, so they can check that out.
Well, Val, thank you for being here. And
despite
the fact that you buzzed me like 3 times today,
no, I didn't.
I think I may still have you back for another show.
I would love to. Thanks.
You do 4 or 5, you cross the line, that's it. You're not coming back. Not coming back anymore.
Thanks again.
All right.
I appreciate it. See you
So,
soon.
Val, I appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone at home for tuning in for this week's Climate Classroom. Again, you can watch it on WFLA.com. You can watch it on our Facebook page. And also, we will package this up. We're going to send it to YouTube. We're going to send it to Spotify. We're going to send it to Apple Podcasts. You'll be able to watch it and listen to it on those platforms as well. So, again, I want to thank you very much for joining me for the Climate Classroom. It's been great, and I'll see you again next week.
Watch or listen to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by Armor View Window and Door on WFLA social media platforms, and find Jeff's climate reports on WFLA.com.